This is the 1 year anniversary of Punk coming back to the WWE. And Bully and Mark, we got to kind of pat ourselves on the back because the scenario that played out on Friday on Smackdown was the scenario that we said should happen last Monday on this show. So that exact scenario is what played out Friday night on Smackdown.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to say, you know what, this is how we see things. And then it happens. But Bully always says it, they're listening. Shit made too much sense not to do it.
Yeah.
Not saying that they did it because we said it, but they're listening.
Yeah, Bully. So it was I think the right way to go. Storyline wise, but also for the moment at Survivor Series, because it was Survivor Series where CM Punk came back after that long time away, should make for a special moment when we get to that pay-per-view this weekend.
Incredible moment created the other night with the return of Heyman and then the return of Punk. Punk going into Survivor Series where he returned 1 year ago today. Obviously, this story keeps getting better and better and better. The WWE keeps putting their foot on the gas pedal. It's impossible to keep up with them and this story right now. I am actually more interested to see what comes out of this. Because let's remember who OG Bloodline went to first. Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins turned them down. They went back to him. He turned them down. Seth was like, absolutely, positively not. And then they turned to CM Punk. And if there's one person that Seth Rollins has a problem with, it's Punk. Something is going to go down. And even though Seth Rollins said no, even though Seth Rollins was adamant about not wanting to be a part of this, I bet you that today, Seth Rollins is pissed off and is taking exception to the fact that the OG Bloodline turned to CM Punk.
Lars, what do you think?
I think that no matter where you go, now that you've added him into the equation, it's like you're not going to fail. There's so many. This is master storytelling to me because, we saw not too long ago Paul Heyman and CM Punk in the same ring, right?
Yeah.
Does everybody remember that?
Yes.
So it's like maybe they were tipping us off way back then, but that's this is the beautiful part about this story.
Now that was June of this year. So fast forward to now, and again, Mark and Bully, this is an example of the WWE connecting the dots and crossing the T's and knowing that the wrestling fan base remembers everything that's on your TV because you need to make it memorable. So now you could always go back to that moment in June.
Well, I think every great storyteller can tie it all together at the end and also then leave openings. It's like being a songwriter in a lot of ways. It's like you have to describe a situation, maybe a person or a thing in 3 minutes, right? And maybe you're getting 2 verses to do that, and that's 8 lines, let's say. And then you try to tie everything in with the chorus. What I'm seeing right now, like as if I were to maybe analyze it and maybe put it in the context of songwriting, is like they're building us to the chorus. And the chorus is when everybody sings along, right? You got your hey, hey, heys, you got your chants, you got everything else. How much bigger can a chorus freaking be in professional wrestling when you look at everybody who's a part of this?
Yeah, and I think Mark and Bully, Paul Heyman described this story as, coming out of WrestleMania 39, like we're only in the bottom of the third. I don't think we can look at this as a game anymore. This is a season. Like, this is more than just one game. And, I want to talk to you, Lars, especially about just this last year with Punk being back home and being back with the WWE, because it feels like in a lot of ways it does feel like he's back home. But I want to stick on the story and what we saw on Friday. Because when you have a good story, you have a lot of different angles and you have a lot of different layers. And you could say this about Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens right now, because I think you saw a side of Kevin Owens that woke a lot of people up when it came to that story. But what really grabbed me, even before the announcement of CM Punk as the 5th member, is what Solo Sikoa had to say on Friday. Once again, Solo Sikoa is saying, I want you, he's talking to Roman Reigns and he's talking to the Usos. I want you guys to be a part of this with me. I love you guys. I love you, Roman. The Usos, I love each. You guys are my family. I love you. Let's do this together. Just be a part of this bloodline with me, and we will rule the WWE for decades. So you have Solo making sense here when it comes to family. I still don't trust Sami Zayn. I don't trust Sami Zayn in this scenario. And quite honestly, I don't know how much I trust CM Punk. And honestly, if I'm the bloodline, the OG bloodline, I don't know how much I trust Paul Heyman. Like, Bloodline 2.0, they trust each other. They would die for one another. There is no fracture at all in their foundation.
Not yet.
Not yet. But in the OG bloodline, it's all based on mistrust and who do I trust and who do I really believe in. If that doesn't make for a good story, I don't know what does.
Dave, I don't know if I feel that. Like,
okay.
I think that Solo is rooted in what he started in. He's rooted in the fact that Roman was a dictator. And just because you don't say, I want it my way, don't mean that that's not the way that he wants it. He's not saying those words. No, it's going to be my way. But you listen to how he talks to Roman. You listen to how he talks to the Usos. He talks to them the way Roman used to talk to him. And we talk about bad behavior and where kids learn shit from. It's like that old commercial. Son, who showed you how to do this? Where'd you get these drugs? I learned it from you. That's exactly what Solo is doing. Until Roman Reigns gets off his damn pride horse and says, guys, I was not a benevolent leader. I'm sorry. Let's lead together the bloodline into the future. All the shit is going to be the way that it is, including Solo, when they turn on him and The Rock comes in and takes over the bloodline right under everybody's nose.
Wow. Bully, what do you think? From what you saw on Friday night, and obviously the excitement, the pomp and circumstance of CM Punk being back, do you believe there is a lot of mistrust with the OG bloodline? Are you convinced Sammy is going to do what's right? Are you convinced that CM Punk is going to do what's right? And I know a lot of fans are reading into how Paul Heyman was dressed on Friday night because he looked almost like Solo Sikoa's twin coming out there on Friday night. Can you trust Paul Heyman? Can Roman trust Paul Heyman at this point?
Well, take that line and isolate it. Can you trust Paul Heyman? If I was to put a gun to your head and say, give me a yes or no answer, what would you say?
No.
Well, then there's the answer to your question. Paul will always do what's right for Paul. When CM Punk was right for Paul, he was with Punk. When Brock Lesnar was right for Paul, he was with Brock. When Roman Reigns was with, Paul was with Roman Reigns. Who did Paul Heyman leave the ring with the other night?
On Friday night?
Yeah. I'm not sure if they showed this on television, but there were, I did see things on social media. Who did Paul Heyman leave the ring with on Friday night?
I don't know. Because it was supposed to have been after. Well, there you go.
Such a good point, Bully, because I'll tell you what, they've even tipped their hat to that in the Hall of Fame about how close those two are. So if you ask me who Paul Heyman's going to be loyal to, it's CM Punk. It's not Roman Reigns. It's not the Bloodline. It's not any of that. I mean, CM Punk was the original Paul Heyman guy. Think about all this. We're talking about 15, almost close to 2 decades worth of wrestling history here that we could all tie in. Would you not at this point take that opportunity to do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're the WWE, you're taking Billy Squire's Stroke song, okay? A song, it was 80s, early 80s?
Yeah, 81, 82.
See, but this is how crazy, when I was listening just to that whole thing come back, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's Billy Squire. That's a song 40 years ago. They're making it make sense 40 years later. That's how good they are.
Yeah.
Everybody pales in comparison. That's why they're the #1 company. And do you think that, yeah, I know there's probably a lot of egos that they got to juggle, but I feel like there's also a lot of veterans there, including Triple H, and including the wrestlers that are in the ring, that are going to know what's best for what's happening with their business. And I think it makes perfect sense for them to tie everything together, because I think that's 10 more years worth of entertainment.
Well, and that's the thing where and listen, Survivor Series War Games is going to be must watch because it's Survivor Series and it's War Games. But I think what makes it even more that you have to watch this and you can't miss it, because you really don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to be able to hold this together? It's really not about can they beat Bloodline 2.0, but can they hold it together? Because it just feels like this isn't glued. This is like Scotch tape together. And would it shock you if Heyman turned on Roman, or if Punk turned, or if Roman turned on the Usos? Because not once when the Usos came back and the Usos looked strong, or even when Punk came out on Friday, Roman seemed surprised by that. He did not expect that to come.
But you think about this, I'm sorry to interrupt, but think about Paul Heyman as a heel. Think about CM Punk as a heel. Okay, they haven't even been given the opportunity. Since CM Punk's been back, he hasn't even been given the opportunity to become a heel. Think about the two of them as heels together. Think about that. Just the possibility of that. That would be insane. I'm just going to throw that out there.
And to your point, Bully, that you said earlier, how is Seth Rollins going to play into this? Because I would have to think tonight on Raw, we're going to hear from Seth Rollins about not taking that opportunity that was presented to him.
I can definitely see Seth being pissed off. And the situation going to play out that Seth is going to be pissed off, and then OG Bloodline, maybe Roman in particular, is going to be like, or any of those guys be like, hey, we came to you first. You shot us down again, and you shot us down hard. The wise man came back, and this is who brought with him. Why wouldn't we want him there? Rollins is going to be pissed off about that. And this is how I believe we will get back to Rollins and Punk. But if you remember a couple of weeks ago, my concern with Rollins and Punk, and it's not a big concern, but it is a concern, is can they recapture the animosity of Punk and Seth from 1 year ago?
They could do it by this, with this story, what's going on right now. Because here's the thing, Mark and Bully and Lars, is we haven't heard from Roman. Like, Roman didn't okay this. Like, Paul Heyman just said, hey, this is 5-on-5. Here comes Punk. But judging from Roman Reigns' facial expression, he didn't seem like he liked it too much. If you really read it, he didn't. So
he said it, Dave. I'm a lip reader. Go back. The first thing that Roman, when him and Punk made eye contact, and he gave him the side eye, he said, "What are you doing here?" And then Paul yelled over the thing, his mouth. You read his lips. He's here to help. So that they said enough. It wasn't an Easter egg. It was them in the ring talking. We just couldn't hear nothing. And then it was all facials. It was all reaction between Punk and Roman looking at each other. And Paul was like this. Evil. Like, it didn't come across to me as, God, please let this work. I want this to work. It didn't come across like that. Paul was like, Sith Lord type shit. just like looking at it like I know that there's something here. Paul had gave me an evil vibe.
One of the
Is
things,
Punk gonna screw Roman over? That's what I'm like, There's so many layers to it that we just have to wait and see what happens. But it don't take a genius to read people's body action. One of the worst fights I ever saw in my life. I knew that fight was about to happen. I knew it was going to happen because the guy did this. He wasn't fucking listening. You can talk to him until you're blue in the face. He already had in his mind, I'm finna punch the shit out of him. As soon as let me get in the right vicinity. I'm gonna let him have it. I knew it was gonna happen. And that's what I got out of Roman and Punk face to face. Did you see the reaction of the Usos, them looking at each other like this? They looking like, oh shit, are they gonna fight?
and those Mark, I don't mean to cut you off. Just a little tidbit. Those reactions right there make everything that goes on mean that much more. Everybody is in on these scenes. Actions, reactions. The people in the background are just as important as the people in the spotlight. Everybody is playing their part perfectly. Just because you're a co-star in this particular scene, in this particular part, doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't important, because those reactions are so important. It's hard to watch other pro wrestling when you see stuff like this, or at least for me, because this is what it looks like and sounds like when it's done correctly. Now, I know, listen, Lars doesn't listen to Poison, but Lars can appreciate Poison for their success. But Lars knows what music sounds like when done correctly. But there are other things out there, like there's your TNAs, your New Japans, your AEWs. I get that. But when you're a wrestler brought up the right way in the industry, and you understand what the foundation of pro wrestling is and what has worked for 100 years and has made money for 100 years. When you see, correct. When you see it happening in front of you, you're like, yes, that's it. It's hard to break it down. It's hard to say, well, they could have did this better. What am I supposed to? You have Roman Reigns and CM Punk staring at each other with Paul Heyman standing in the middle, splitting the difference between the two of them. Nobody is saying a word. Nobody is moving a fucking muscle. But in that moment, you can't top what's going on in pro wrestling right now. Nothing can. Not a tombstone pile driver on top of steel steps. Not a breakout performance. Not a great 5-star match in New Japan. Absolutely nothing. And I'm fucking preaching right now from the mountaintops, because I know that what I'm saying is dead on balls accurate. You cannot top it, because they're doing nothing. They're just looking at one another, and 20,000 people are going ballistic. That's what it's supposed to be.
So looking at this story, Bully, and I can't agree with you more about the build, what we saw on Friday, and the ramifications coming up at Survivor Series this weekend. When you look at this whole scenario, and I know it's early and I'm sure things are going to play out, but Bully, what do you expect to happen at Survivor Series? Like, is this going to be the, and there's a lot of different scenarios. Is it the OG Bloodline imploding? Is Bloodline 2.0 going to get a big victory? Is, Mark, to your point, are we going to see somebody from the outside come in? What do you think's going to happen this weekend?
Mark, I'm just going to say I just want to say this because it's on the top of my head. I'm not saying I'm right in any way, shape, or form. The Bloodline already has their story. It's carved out. We have to somehow get to Roman and Solo. That has to happen. But the seeds are planted. It's already in the works. We know we're going to get there. I want to see Seth screw Punk somehow, some way. Nobody's expecting CM Punk to lose this match. And what a way for Seth to go, fuck you. You chose him over me. Well, I'm going to screw him, in which I've screwed all of you, because now you lost, and now Punk and Seth have an issue. Are they going to do that? No idea. But that's the first thing that pops into my mind when you tell me, what would I like to see coming out of this?
Because what that does is it reheats something that happened a year ago, but now you're doing it on TV. This isn't being played out after a pay-per-view or on social media. This is going to be storyline. And this may be one of the few times that you're going to have a story with the Bloodline that's going to involve Punk and Seth. So you kind of get a rub off the biggest storyline that's going on in the WWE. Mark, do you think what do you expect is going to happen this weekend?
I think just what Bully said, like the whole point is to get the attention of the wrestling world with Solo and Roman going at it for the supremacy of the Udafala and who's going to be the tribal chief. But how that happened is going to be hinged on what Punk is going to do versus the Bloodline 2.0 and what Seth, and if Seth is going to come through the back door and screw them and allow them to fail. And then once they fail, that opens the door for somebody else to come in and say, you couldn't even do that right. You went and got a big hired gun and the shit didn't work. How should we expect you to lead? And you the little brother. What the fuck have you done? Besides tell 3 Tongans what to do. You heard that song, They Not Like Us? All Rock got to do is say, they're family light. He said, I'm not trying to be the tribal chief. I'm trying to be the high chief, like my grandfather, who was above everybody. That's the story I want to see. Because when you have the high chief, Peter Maivia, Dwayne's name is Maivia. He's a descendant of the greatness. He's the only one left that's a boy. So why do you not put the historical reference at the top? That's just.
Well, they showed that
Mark. Hold on, Dave. Mark, you said something that I like. Storyline point. My last name might be Johnson, but I'm the only Maivia left, or something to that effect. Link back to the High Chief, which may be a little too deep and a little too far back for the WWE to bring this newer generation up to speed.
They show his face, Bully, in every promo.
Okay, fine.
Okay, fine. When the WWE show comes on,
but guys,
they show Peter Maivia face with all of the greats. When they do the TikTok, the tick, Peter Maivia at the top.
But don't forget, but Mark, to your point, guys, don't forget the press conference from WrestleMania 40. What the first thing The Rock showed when he came out was the family tree. Like all you, and I mean, that's all you have to go back to is show that family tree, and the direct descent of Peter Maivia and The Rock. So Mark, to your point, you think we're going to see The Rock this weekend?
I think so. Without sounding like a killjoy for everybody else, like it's going to come down to money. It's going to come down to prestige. It's going to come down to power. And it's going to come down to influence. Who has all of those?
Cody?
I'll wait. I'm still waiting.
The Rock.
Damn fucking right. If he can make a phone call and say, I don't want him on the show, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
You ain't on the show. I remember a famous guy that me and Bully worked with that had beef with somebody, and we were on the hot tour. We were on the Stone Cold Steve Austin side. We were making money. Steve was selling out everybody and selling out everything.
Some of us refer to it as the Dudley side, but keep going, Mark.
On the Dudley side. And then somebody on the other side was like, well, I want to work in an angle with so-and-so who was on that card. And that guy said, I don't fucking like him. I remember this. And it ain't my place to say their names because I might get fucking killed. But that shit happens. Power happens.
Mafia shit.
That's mob shit.
Told
He
you.
was able to say, Vince, no. If you okay, if you want him, man, my back's starting to hurt.
But let me go to this, and I want to ask Lars. I want to ask Lars his opinion. Rock tied to the bloodline, obviously. Mm-hmm. Mark presents a scenario with Rock coming back, bloodline stuff, the Maivia name. But based on the last thing that we saw with Rocky, let's go back 2 times ago. Post the night after WrestleMania, Rock and Cody face to face. Rock hands Cody something, we don't know what it is, and then at the end of Bad Blood, Rock comes out and stands in the aisle while Roman and Cody are standing side by side in the ring. If The Rock comes back tomorrow, would you like to see him be a part of the Bloodline story and pick it up, or go off with Cody?
We haven't seen The Rock and Roman Reigns yet. I think that's what we're building up to. I really honestly believe that. And I think, they might get to it with exactly how you described it, like with the Maivia thing. You know what I mean? Because, okay, so WrestleMania's in Las Vegas. 2 nights, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's very close for Rock to get to since he lives in Los Angeles. It's got to be him and Roman for the main event on one of the nights. It has to be. Because then you're leaving room for everybody else. You know what I mean? You're going to be able to tie in a lot of. I don't think we're going to get Rock and Cody for a while.
Yeah, and I agree with you. We got to take a break, Lars, but I agree with you, and especially after Red One, I don't think The Rock's big enough to get in the ring with Cody. 877-344-4893, 877-FIGHT-93. We'll
Passive aggressive.
That's called facts. We'll continue the discussion when we're back right here on Busted Open.